Welcome to the Sysadmin Show, the podcast that explains everything sysadmins do, the technology they work with. I'm your host, Dustin Raybrook, here to give a jumpstart to your IT career. Today's show is episode 20, In the Lab with Server 2019 Core Edition. Well, hey everybody, it's nice to be back, and hopefully you guys have had a good week or so that I've been away. I'm trying to get on a rhythm with these, trying to get something out every week to you. Hopefully I can keep that up. I'm definitely not going to swear by that, but I'll do my best. And want to start out today with a shout out to a listener who I've been talking to. I believe his name is pronounced Marwan. Marwan, if you're listening and I'm pronouncing that wrong, please shoot me an email and give me an idea of the right way to pronounce it somehow. I don't know how to do that in email, but let me know if I'm going the wrong way with that, and I'll correct it for the record. So he just kind of took me up on my offer to email me and just tell me what's going on in his career, and he just more on the more recently side became a sysadmin after working in a help desk role for 5 years. And congratulations on the promotion and on the movement there. I mean, that sounds, as I've said in the past, that sounds about right. From what I've seen, what I've experienced, typically you're going to see that kind of transition towards a sysadmin or even some other more senior role after 5, 6 or so years, depending on the place where you're working, the opportunities that arise as people retire or move up themselves, and just if you're good at what you do. So obviously they've seen something in you that tells them that you know what's going on, and they want to keep you moving on. So he had a few questions for me regarding the home lab setup that I have, and one of them was, is VMware a free product? And the answer is yes. At least the edition that I've been using in the lab here is a free product. It's called ESXi, and the way that it works is has a very limited number of features, and you can only use it. You can only manage one box on its own. You can install it on multiple different boxes if you wanted to. But you can't manage them as like a cluster as you can with the paid versions, and you really don't have a ton of features in there. But the ESXi edition is great for the home lab, and it gives you access to all the same kinds of networking and disk and hardware management tools that you would be using a more powerful version of in a production paid version. But there's tons to tweak, tons to do in there, and really a lot to learn. So I spent, before I was working professionally with VMware, I spent a lot of time with ESXi in a home lab environment, getting some hands-on learning experience, and that really gave me a boost, right? Helps me really know what I was doing when I started to use the more powerful stuff. And then he was also asking about my hardware, right? The servers that I was installing it on, or the switch that I'm using. And it just so happens that for my environment, I'm using an HP, I think it's a DL360 G6. So a relatively old HP server, but it is a server class piece of hardware. And I'm using an HP ProCurve switch. And again, it's not it's a very old switch. It's gigabit, but it's not PoE. It's kind of a bigger chassis thing. And these are just kind of hand-me-downs that were no longer needed at one of the places I was working at one time. So they work well, but they are not required for what we were doing in the lab. First of all, VMware, you can install that on at least version 6.5 and earlier on almost any home computer. You just need a network card on there, that it'll recognize, and there's a few limitations around CPU, but 6.5 and earlier is what I would target. And there aren't too many requirements. Most machines that I've tried to install it on, it has just worked. On the switch side, some of the work I was doing was with VLANs. So in order to do that, you're going to need a VLAN capable switch. You can get those relatively inexpensively. And a lot of this older hardware that actually is professional enterprise level hardware, you can get this stuff secondhand really inexpensively on places, online. There's a lot of used equipment places, and if you get to a spot where you start needing those features, that would be the time to get it. But to get a basic home lab setup, you don't even need VLANs. That was just something that was kind of a nice to have, an add-on for what I was doing there. All right. And so I guess, Marwan, thank you very much for writing in and kind of sharing your story. And I really appreciate it. And I just want to encourage you to keep on learning as much as you can. And again, thanks for writing in. So this is the 20th episode, which is a little bit of a milestone for me, right? I'm really happy with the way things have been going, and I'm really trying to continue finding ways to help you guys as much as possible. And one of the options that I've considered, and now I'm going to throw out there and offer up, and we'll see how it goes, is I really want to help you guys get the most out of your IT career. And that could be, right, if you want to be in a different position than you're in now, or if you're not even in IT and you want to transition and get your first IT job, right? If you're looking for a different work schedule, maybe different hours or what have you, trying to balance work and life or anything there. If you're looking for a different work culture, if the people you're working with today are not, or the company that you're working with does not have a culture that really sits well with you, and you're looking for a change, or if you're just looking for a salary increase, right? If you're just, if you've been in a position for a while and you don't seem to be moving the way that you had expected, I would love to help you. And what I'm going to do is I will be offering one-on-one career coaching sessions for a limited number of people. I think what I'm going to do is limit this to only three people, and at least to start, the reason for that is I don't know. I want to make sure I can give the right amount of attention to the people I take on, and I don't want to take on too many people too quickly and then not be able to serve them properly. And the cost of this is going to be $150 per session, and each session is 1 hour. And whoever I take on as a client, I'm going to make a commitment to, I will be available for, whatever sessions you want for a 12-month period. So I'm here for the long run, right? I'm not just going to have a session with you and then all of a sudden not be available. I'm saying that if we start from our first session, you can say, I want, I just want the one session and I'm good, or I want one session a month, or just one session a quarter, whatever it is. I'm going to be there for you for at least 12 months, because sometimes these changes take time, and it really could, you really want to take the long-term view on building up your career. And I want to make sure I'm there with you as you do that. So anybody who is interested, I'm going to be offering 15-minute free interviews, right? I did quotes, you couldn't see it with my fingers. Right, 15-minute free calls, right? A web call where we just spend some time talking to each other, finding out if it's a good fit on both sides. If it is, we can talk about scheduling the first session. If not, then it does, then it was get a chance to talk to some of the listeners, and we'll both move on. So if you are interested, send me an email, dustin@sysadminshow.com, and put in the subject coaching session so that I know to what it's about, and I know to follow up with you, and I will definitely be following up with you. All right, so that brings us to today's show, and today should be interesting. It's going to be working with Server 2019 Core Edition in the lab, and I want to give you a little brief background about my environment here. First of all, this I am recording my screen capture of this episode. So anybody who wants to follow along with the video should go over to my YouTube channel and find it there. It should just be, I'm not actually sure too much about how YouTube works. I'll put a link in the show notes on the website. My YouTube channel should just be Sysadmin Show. I'm not sure. I don't think I can get a quick link to it like youtube.com/sysadmin show until I get a certain number of viewers or videos on there. I'll work on that. But I'll also be releasing this, a link to this in the newsletter. So if you want to get those emails automatically, go to sysadminshow.com and you'll see a sign up spot to sign up for the newsletter. So what we've got here is my Windows 10 computer, and I've enabled HyperV. And in order to do that, if you've never virtualized before, your CPU may not be set up for it, so you need to go into the BIOS and make sure you enable virtualization. I've already done that, and you also need to turn on HyperV, and I'll show you how to do that right here under Apps and Features on Windows 10. Let's see here. Manage Optional Features. I already did this on this computer, but you should see it here. Oh, that's not even close to the right spot. Add a feature. No, this is not even the right spot. Let's see. I really can't stand the Windows 10 stuff. So I bypass that, go to Programs and Features, and turn on a Windows feature. And now I get the traditional list of Windows feature I'm looking for. And right here in the list is HyperV, and it's got two spots. It's got HyperV Management Tools and HyperV Platform. We want them both. Check, check, hit OK. It's going to install them. Tell you you need to reboot. Go ahead and do that. Once you have rebooted, you want to launch HyperV Manager. And so I've got that open here. And I've already connected to my local desktop. But if I wasn't connected, so I do remove server here, HyperV Manager, you see on the right-hand side, connect to server, just click that and say local computer and hit OK. And now we're connected. And you can see I just have the default Windows 10 random name for my computer. It hasn't been customized to any great degree. And there are lots of links and buttons and options and things to do here. All right, so we'll go over them as they come up. So a couple things here. This is where I'm going to install it. I figured this is probably a much more accessible way to have a lab. So I'm hoping more of you will be able to follow along, because most people have a Windows 10 computer laying around, and you do not need crazy specs. If you've got 20 or 30 gigs of disk space available, and you've got at least a couple of gigs of RAM available, then this will work on your computer. It may not be blazing fast, but it'll give you a chance to try out some server software with no cost to you. So HyperV comes free with Windows 10. I'm not sure on the version. I'm running Pro, so it may not be possible on Windows 10 Home, but on Windows 10 Pro it definitely is. And what we're going to be doing is installing Server 2019, and that I have downloaded. I have the ISO here. I went to Windows or Microsoft's evaluation page, found it on there. You just put in your email address and some info, and they will give you a free 180-day trial of almost all of their server products. It's pretty fantastic. So now that I have that ISO downloaded, and this thing's decent, right, for almost 5 gigs, let's go about the process of building this thing out. So one thing you're going to notice as I go along is, first of all, this is my first time installing or even using at all Server 2019. So why is that, right? It's been out for a little while. Well, I am the sysadmin at a relatively small, less than 1,000 users company, and I've got a lot to do. I'm still getting, working on getting rid of Server 2008 R2, getting it up to Server 2012 R2. I'm not deploying 2016 at this time, and I haven't even given 2019 a thought yet. But I will be skipping 2016, going right to 2019, and I'm getting to the point where I can't ignore it anymore, and it just seemed like a good time to start looking into it. So, as much as I like to play with new technology, I just don't have the bandwidth to, and by bandwidth I mean time. I don't know. I don't want to confuse anybody out there. It's a term that gets used around my office all the time. So I don't have the time to try everything as it comes out as soon as I would like to, but I do eventually start taking a look at things when I see it on the horizon, when I see it going to start to affect my production systems. And I see 2019 in the future for us, so I want to start playing with it. All right, so because of that, the first time you install any new technology, it can be intimidating. And I want to go through this process with you guys. I want you guys to see how I react and deal and investigate a new product. And this is not going to be super smooth because I haven't done this version before. There's going to be things that I'm discovering. So what I will do is probably edit out any segments that are fairly uninformative, fairly long, to help shorten this episode along. But other than that, it's just going to be me working through this, and I'll try to narrate as I go when it seems necessary. And what are my goals here? It's good to have goals whenever you're investigating a technology. So for me, my goal is to get a successful installation of the core edition in this lab environment, and I want to configure some basic services. I want to use PowerShell to do that, because I think PowerShell is good to know, and I'm a little bit rusty at it most of the time. And I want to try doing this remotely with Computer Management Console. I should be able to, from Windows 10, remotely manage my Server 2019 instance, since the core edition, for those that don't know, or maybe haven't tried out the core edition before, the core edition is completely headless. So there is after it's installed, and even during the installation, maybe not during, I guess I won't, I'll find out in a second. But once it's installed, there is nothing but a command line interface to Server 2019, which in and of itself can be very intimidating. I don't have a lot of experience. I have no core currently deployed in production, but I see the advantages of it. And as far as being really lightweight, more secure, because you're not installing so many components that could also have their own exploits, and some of the manageability of it, managing lots of systems in bulk. And I'm kind of looking forward to finding out where I see it fitting in my environment going forward. All right, so let's get going here. I'm going to do a new virtual machine. I have no idea what Quick Create is. I've never used that before. So I'm just going to go the way I know how and click on New Virtual Machine. Skip some of these first menus, and I'll give this thing a name, Server. I don't like spaces in my names for whatever reason, so I tend to use underscores or dashes in between words. So server 2019 core will work for me. And this thing, HyperV, for those who have used it, I don't know. It stores things in weird places. I don't want this going in program data, Microsoft Windows HyperV. I like things to be on the root. So I'm just going to erase all of this and just say go C/HyperV. I've only got the one hard drive on this. It is an SSD, so it should be relatively quick. All right. And I want to do a generation 2. So generation 2 is for the newest OSs, and it can only be 64-bit. That qualifies for what we're doing, and it has to stay that way, and it's going to enable some more features. So I always do generation 2 going forward here. All right, startup RAM 124. That should be plenty, especially since we're going to do a core edition. We could probably even do less than that on a core edition. And I do not want dynamic memory. So dynamic memory basically will share, it won't commit the whole gigabyte of memory to the VM. And I don't like that, especially in production. If this was a lab and I had limited resources, I would be okay with that. I have the resources. This machine happens to have 16 gigs of RAM, and I've got plenty free. So I'm not going to mess around with it, but it's a HyperV option. VMware has a RAM sharing option as well. It just scares me. I don't want to mess with that. I'd rather have my resources committed to my virtual machines. I mean, obviously CPU is a shared resource, but disk, I like to do, especially now that I have an all flash array, I like to do full thick disks to all of my VMs. Now my array is data deduplicating on the back end and actually doing live compression on the back end. So that helps me save space. But I want to commit as many resources as I can so that I don't have conflicts and don't over provision too much. All right. So now I have to give this thing a network connection. I'm going to give it the default switch. That is something that is created as part of the installation of HyperV, and you can create as many of these as you want. To give you an example, all right, I'm showing the adapter settings now, and for this computer only has one Ethernet card, and I see now 2 adapters on here, the Ethernet and then vEthernet, and in parentheses, default switch. So HyperV automatically created a switch that's basically just a shared network of the Ethernet, and it's a virtual switch. So I can actually create multiple virtual switches, and some of them could be shared, some of them could be private, or if I had multiple network cards, I could assign certain ones just to certain network cards to bring in other networks, other VLANs if I needed to. All right, so we're going to leave that like that. All right, we need to create a virtual hard disk. By default, it creates 127 gigabytes. This is going to be a thin provisioned disk because I don't have enough SSD space to handle a giant one. I'll leave it at 127 because I have no reason not to, since it's going to be thin provisioned. I'll just leave that alone and install operating system from a bootable image file. I'll check that and browse to my desktop, grab my ISO, and click finish. All right, so it's going to build that all up. And if you've never looked at kind of the settings of a HyperV VM before, I'm going to go ahead and full screen this now. I should have done that in the first place. All right, we right click on the VM that was created and say settings. Now, most of those settings that we just defined are configurable, and we don't have to live with all the settings that we just created. I can go through and change a bunch of these, but I'm going to leave them alone for now. You know what? I might add a processor. I've got the CPU available. This is a 6-core AMD I'm using, and it might make the process a little bit faster. All right, I think we're good inside here. There's tons of settings to go through. I'm not going to go through them all right now. I'm going to hit OK, save that change, and my state is currently off. If I right click and say connect, it should bring up a window. This is my remote viewer of the screen, of the display that's going to be shown. And if I hit this little green power button, start, it's going to boot up. Press any key to boot from CD. Yep. Let's see if this works here. Nothing is happening. And now it's already gone into PXE boot, so I think I missed the window. So let's do turn off. Try that again. Power back on. All right, there we go. I had to click that any key really quickly. And let's see what we got here. All right, Server 2019 installation. This is pretty standard so far, and this is a GUI. So I was wrong about this being a full command line install. It's a GUI install, so I can use my mouse, hit next, say install now. And I should be able to choose coming up here what option, because the install trial that I have here, this ISO, is not only core, it's all the editions of Server 2019, and I should be able to pick which one I want. So it's interesting. I'm already seeing here what they've done. They've actually gotten rid of the naming for core, right? It used to be Server 2012 Core Edition and Server 2012, right, Standard. Now it's saying Standard Edition is what I believe is going to be the Core Edition. And then if you want to, you can do the desktop experience. So they've kind of changed the default from having a GUI to the default being no GUI. And here it is, right here, recommended. This option omits most of the graphical environment, managed with a command prompt and PowerShell, or wrote remotely with Windows Admin Center. Interesting. We'll have to see what that's about. I thought I could just use computer management, but that might be a special tool. All right, so do I want standard or data center? Well, obviously, this is a free evaluation. I want data center. So we're going to click on Windows Server 2019 Data Center Evaluation. And we are not doing desktop experience. And you can see these are all, they only offer 64-bit for Server 2019. And accept the terms. I'm going to do a custom install. I'm going to use my full. And now this is my drive 0, 127 gigabyte. This is a virtual drive. I can actually show you here. If I go to that path, this is one of the reasons I wanted it to be right in the root, so it's easy to get to. So there's my HyperV folder. Here's my VM is in a folder. And what do I have? I've got snapshots. We'll talk about those later. I've got virtual machines and virtual machine hard disks. So virtual machines, these are the configuration files that make up my VM I just created. And under virtual machine hard disks, here is my hard disk. And there's two pieces to it. There is a hard disk image file, and then there's the AVHDX. And this is the actual data, and this is kind of, I believe, a little configuration file. I'm not sure. But you can see it is not 127 gigs. It is currently 36 megs and growing. So this will, I'll check it on this a little bit later after we do the install. This will be gigs before we're done with the install here. All right, I'm just gonna go, we could say new. Yeah, let's do it. Let's say new, apply. I like to do this. It's gonna create some additional partitions. That's fine. Even though this isn't necessary, I kind of like to see the partitions before I hit next. If you hit next, it'll just do this all automatically. And there we go. Lots of partitions, recovery and system and MSR. And now we have a little bit less data available, but there's our primary. Hit next. And this is going to run. I believe this should go pretty fast since it's all local SSD to SSD. All right, I'm going to restart. And I do not want to boot off the ISO this time. I should have everything I need from that. I can even disconnect it if I need to. But I should just be able to not click anything and it will boot off the virtual disk this time. All right, this is interesting. Connect to core. It's kind of asking about my resolution, which is weird. I'm just going to say connect. So it made my console a little bit more widescreen. Oh, I see. So it's giving me a window. Yeah, this is really different than what I'm used to. So it's giving me a window that has the console in it. And then inside that window is the command line. So I need to, the user's password must be changed. All right, I'll do that. All right, do my typical, what do I do for labs? Password 1 with a capital P in the number 1, PASSWRD, number 1. And, oh my goodness. They don't match. There we go. My password has been changed. All right. I fat figured it the first time, but we're good now. And I am presented with C/users/administrator. That's it. What in the world do you do now? Right? I've got a server. I don't know, LS? No, I can't do that. Oh, this isn't even PowerShell. Can I run PowerShell? Aha. All right, so I just typed in the command PowerShell, and now I'm in PowerShell LS. So I love it. Microsoft has taken the bash, a lot of the bash commands, and brought them in to PowerShell. And so I can run some of the Linux commands I'm familiar with in here, which is pretty awesome. Okay. So I got from command line, which is what's given to you by default. I kind of upgraded or enabled PowerShell commands from there. So now I can at least do some things. And from here, let's do ipconfig, see what we have for an IP. I guess see if it's detecting. Interesting. It didn't know what to do with that. Ah, did I type it wrong? Oh, I fat fingered it. That's why. So ipconfig, and I see that it's detected my Ethernet adapter, my virtual Ethernet adapter, right? There's no hardware here. It's all virtual hardware, so I shouldn't really have any driver issues. And it's seeing my IP of 172.17. That's a weird number. What is the IP? I'm going to look at my local computer here. That doesn't sound right. My local computer IP. But maybe this is computers in my lab. IP. Hello. There we go. IP config. No, see my, oh, here we go. So why is my computer, my host machine is in the 192.168 address space. And my default switch here is showing 172.17, 189.177, and I got a similar IP. So something is handing out IPs. That's really interesting. So let's do ipconfig/all. It should tell us who our DHCP server is. Aha. So by default, out the gate, this thing is acting as a DHCP server, which is really weird. And it's acting as a DNS server.
But this thing's kind of got a lot going on already. Holy cow. So there's the host name, win dash SN random numbers and letters. Yeah, there's already a lot going on here. So I am pretty lost at the command line with what I'm being presented right now and what should I be doing. I guess the first thing I want to do is turn off DHCP. I have no interest in this thing handing out DHCP licenses. And so that's why, let's go back to that for a second. We go to my local computer and do ipconfig/all. The reason I'm guessing why it received an IP is because, nope, hang on a second. What's going on here? That's a different IP now than what it was a second ago, right? I did ipconfig. Oh no. It's the same. All right. I was just confused. So it is the IP of the same IP that my local computer has. 17.17.189.177. Oh, here it is. This, okay. Interesting. Default gateway. So it's not the server, right? So the server 2019's IP is .189, but it's getting IPs from .177, which appears to be coming from the virtual switch. Why is the virtual switch giving out IP addresses? Let's go to my virtual switch manager and default switch. And I don't really see any settings in here. I've never known that to happen. So there must be some pretty major stuff that I'm missing. So this shows you how inexperienced I am with Server 2019. And potentially with Hyper-V on the newest. This is Windows 10 1809. I have not used Hyper-V on that before. So why is this getting an IP from what appears to be local switch? I'm sure we can ping that 172.17.189.177. I guess I'm not so sure. All right, let's do like a get DHCP or get. Need to do some sort of a get command to find out what's going on. Huh. This is awfully confusing. So I'm going to go right to the graphical console. I'm starting to without starting to Google things, right? Which would be one of my next steps here pretty soon. Is I'm going to see if I can get a console on this thing with some graphical control, which is what I'm more used to. So if we go to computer management, let's see if we can connect to this. Let's see what happens. All right. I'm going to right click on computer management and connect to another computer. And in here, I guess I'd try putting in the IP address. And I'm wondering if there is a firewall. Since I couldn't ping it, I am wondering if there is a firewall. So I'm going to take a look at that while we're waiting for that to fail. Check firewall status. And yes. I have a firewall turned on. As well. Not connected, connected. Guest to private networks or public networks. I'm going to turn that off for right now. For private networks. Let's see if that ping command works now. Nope, still nothing. Let's see if this works. All right, it's time to Google something. We're not getting very far. All right, server 2019. Ooh, look at that. So this is a good tool to have. You run sconfig, and now we can use the graphical interface to change some basic settings. We can, let's see, change computer name, add admins, configure remote management. Let's turn that one on for remote management. Remote desktop even. Wow, that's kind of interesting. So you could have a remote desktop that's graphical on a core non-graphical interface. That would be kind of cool. Network settings. So let's see, current remote management is enabled. Well, that's good. All right, return to main. Configure server response to ping. Ooh, let's take a look at that while we're here. Allow remote machines to ping the server? Yes. Okay. Let's see. So ping is turned off by default. That would make sense from a security standpoint. Oh, look at that. Now I can ping my server. We are making progress. Being able to ping, right? Basic network connectivity is kind of the first thing you want to try to achieve. All right, main menu. What else can we do here? Windows Update. Oh, installing updates. That's how you would do it through this graphical interface here. Let's take a look at network settings, shall we? All right. HyperV network adapter. So I can select my network adapter 1. And this thing has DHCP enabled, default gateways, all that stuff's already there. So nothing we didn't already know. Let's go back to the main menu. Remote desktop is disabled, which I think for our purposes, I'd want to enable that so I could try it out. 7, enable or disable. E for enable. Any version should be fine, although, I mean, this is the lab, so I'm going to do number 2, allow clients running any version of remote desktop less secure. But I think the more secure option would work just as well. All right, that's been enabled. What else do we have here? Windows activation. That's kind of interesting. Telemetry, date and time. All right. So let's see what we could do here. Well, I wonder if computer management was already turned on. We need to find something called Windows Admin Center. Do a quick search for that. And here we go. Download now. Looks like there's a preview version and a general availability version. So let's go for the general availability version at this point. And we'll download that. Oh, it's pretty tiny, 63 megs. Okay, got that downloaded and launched it too many times now because my computer was going slow. Let's see what we can do here. Windows Admin Center. Let's do it. Next. Yeah, sure. Use Windows Update to update this. I don't care. And this enables you to manage computers directly from this PC using a web browser. Interesting. Okay. It's going to create a port. And yeah, let's create a desktop shortcut. That should be good. Oh, I love how looking into one piece of technology kind of branches off and then you find all sorts of new stuff that revolves around it. So I'd never heard of this before. And again, up to this point, I've been primarily managing Server 2008 R2 and Server 2012 R2. So it just hasn't been necessary to get into this stuff. But now that I've started down this path, excited to see what else there is. This tool seems kind of cool. I wonder if I could use this tool to manage some of my current VMs. All right. One more thing. The first time you open it, you'll have to select a certificate. Be sure to select the admin client certificate. Okay. I will do my best. So this should be opening up. And there's the admin center certificate. I'll select that. So what this has done is it's launched a browser. So this is actually very much like if you guys were following along with the VMware Lab series, this is very much like how we were managing that. It was all web-based. Welcome. I'm going to skip the tour. I'll show myself around. Thank you very much. Okay. So we've got a web browser that's going to our local host. And there's a service now. The Windows Admin Center service is running on port 6566. We can see localhost. And then this colon determines the port number that it's on. So if there is no colon and no port number, then it's on typically on port 80. Well, if it's HTTP, it's 80. If it's HTTPS, it's 443. So this is going to be HTTPS. That's why we had a certificate, but it's on a non-standard port. So it has to tell it what port it is there. All right. And look at all these cool options we have here. And what is this? Desktop. That's not the name of our desktop, is it? So already there's a server in here. No, that's not. That's the name of this desktop. So far it's already recognized my Windows 10 computer. Let's click on Add a server connection and server name. What if I want to do the IP 172.17.189.189? Oh, this is interesting. Credentials needed. Access was denied. Use account. All right. So I want to do administrator and password 1. Submit with credentials. Didn't work. I do not want to save my credentials. Thank you very much. All right. What did I do wrong here? Administrator. And I think that, let me look at my console here. Add local administrator. Let's take a look at that. 3. Enter account to join administrators group. Let me cancel that. Let me log off the user 12. See what that does. Probably nothing good. Interesting. Kind of closed the window on me. Now is it Control-Alt-Delete to unlock? So typically you can't do Control-Alt-Delete in a VM environment because it's going to send it to your host computer, not the computer you have the VM. So there is a Control-Delete button built into the client. All right. Enter credentials for administrator, or hit escape to switch. So let's try this password 1. All right, so that definitely let me in. Let me try, maybe I typed that wrong here. Okay, that got me in. I must have typed the password wrong. No surprise there. I really do not do well on this Amazon Basics keyboard. It just doesn't quite work well with my typing style. All right, so now I have a server listed here and last connected never. Let's fix that. Let's click on it. Connecting. Couldn't connect. Well, that's interesting and kind of disappointing. Didn't really give me many options. Well, let's click to the desktop and see what happens. Whoa. So it popped up with a Windows command processor. Show details. This is running a funky Windows command line. Let's say yes to that. Connection error. Remote server failed with the following error message. Management services cannot process the request. Interesting. Okay. So far we're striking out right and left here, but we are moving forward. And so this is the point where I want to just keep trying, looking at the problem from different angles, keep trying different things, right? Finding paths that I can move forward and make some progress to find out what's going on. So I'm going to try this again just to see. I still can't connect, which is interesting. Manage as, connect, edit tags. I'm guessing manage as would give me a different username. It's possible for some reason that you're not allowed to manage it as the admin user. Now, does anybody remember what that command was? Was it sconfig? Oh, wow, it was. All right. So remote management is enabled. Let's take a look at network time and date settings 9. It actually popped up a graphical clock, which is pretty cool. Now, this is interesting. This server is in Pacific time, and timing is actually pretty important when it comes to remote connections. So it could be an authentication issue because of time. So I'm going to put this back in Eastern time, which is where I am. It will match my computer. So now 11:39 p.m., 11:39 p.m. And I'm going to say okay to that. So let's see if I can now remote connect into this thing. I cannot. All right, so that was not the issue, but that's good to have fixed. That could have caused other issues in the future. Let's try the admin account. 3, and enter account to join. Let's call this account. I'll do my name, my first initial, last name. And I have to pick a password. I'm going to do the same password because I don't care. Password 1. Oh, I don't think I got those right. Huh, apparently I did. All right, so now we have a new credential in the system that we can use. And let's do manage as. Let me change this. Use this credential for all connections. Continue. Of course, I didn't like it. DRUI. Yep, spelled all that right. Because the server cannot be resolved, which is interesting. Oh, it's trying to do this on, nope. I thought I was trying to do it on the desktop, but that doesn't, let me uncheck this box. Nope. Huh. Well, it does not seem to like this credential. Let me just verify that I can log in with it. So let me log off 12. Do my Control-Alt-Delete button. Which one am I going to try to log on? Oh, so I have to hit escape to switch users. No. Hit escape. Oh, here we go. I hit escape a bunch of times, and now I got to a list where I can arrow through and select my D. Raybrook username, and now it let me log in. All right, let's go to sconfig. All right, and remote management is enabled as this user. So let's try this again. It's still not taking that user. That's really strange. Seems like it would be a full admin user, but it is not. So we know we have a username that will work. Oh, interesting. So even the original username isn't working at this point. What has changed? Let's cancel that. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And I'm going to add it back. So a server connection. I'm going to start. Let me double check the IP here. Network settings 8. Yeah, IP hasn't changed. It didn't seem to like the fact. It does want to go by DNS name, so let's try that. But once again, that credential, a credential was allowed me to get this far, but will I be able to get farther? Connecting, couldn't connect. So I can add it, but I cannot do anything with it once I add it. So I think it's time to look up server 2019 admin center. Unable to connect. Is that the error I'm getting? Unable to connect? What does it say? Couldn't verify connection. And I picked the result that kind of most lined up with what I was what I thought I was facing. So we're getting started with Windows Admin Center, and let's see what this thing says. Well, I can manage server 2008 with limited functionality, 2012, 2012 R2, 2016. Wow. And other Windows 10 systems. Windows Management Framework 5.1 is required. I have the installation center, add servers, specify the credentials, server name. I'm still wondering if having the IP in there is causing this problem. I should really try the name. If the system where WAC is installed has an internet connection, blah, blah, blah. All right, what are we doing here? Well, that didn't help at all. Let's try something else. Petri. This site usually has good stuff. All right. Connect to a server. So far, I'm not finding out why. Let's go to Microsoft. I should have clicked on the first link in the first place. Their troubleshooting steps. Maybe they're not in the right group. Maybe they need to be in the remote management users group. If you're using a local user account, I am using the built-in admin account. I am connecting to a work group machine on a different subnet. Maybe this is a firewall issue. Maybe this could just all be a firewall issue. Set net firewall name. That looks promising. Let's say get net firewall rule. Let's see what kind of firewall we have here. Let's do exit. Exit to command line 15. And PowerShell. And I'm typing get dash net adapter. Looking for firewall options. What was that called again? Net firewall rule. Get net fire. There we go. So get net firewall address filter, application filter, interface. Firewall profile. Let's hit enter on that. Get dash net firewall profile. Okay. Enabled true. Enabled true. So the firewall is turned on by default. That would make sense. I wonder if I could, since we're in a lab here, just disable the firewall altogether. So set net firewall rule. Let's look up that. PowerShell, disable, Windows firewall. Look at that, top result. And there it is. Okay. So erase all this, and I want to do set dash net firewall profile. I just hit tab after I get most of it typed. And that completes the command. Dash profile space domain public private commas in between dash enable false. probably. Oh, enabled, didn't do the D there. And there we go. So now let's do our get network firewall profile and enabled false, false, false. All right, obviously this was a production system. We would be much more surgical about this, but we are in the lab, so we're making big changes to get big results quickly. Let's see what happens. And we're in. Woo! That was fun. So, as you can see, I had to try a lot of different things. Not all of them were successful, but after a little bit of research and some and hunting down different paths and different opportunities, kind of taking a basic networking approach to problem solving, saying, okay, can I ping? Well, I couldn't ping. I found out how to enable that. Once I could ping, I know that my basic network routing and networking is working. Then it's like, okay, what else could be blocking this? Well, I have a client firewall on the host machine, and I disabled that. Did not make a difference. Well, there's two sides of the connection, so it must be a firewall. There's very possibly a firewall on the server that I'm working on, and there indeed was. We found out how to use the PowerShell commands with a little bit of Googling and quickly disabled it, and now we're in. And this is really cool. This thing has shown me kind of all the graphs and charts and stuff of my servers and CPU utilization. I mean, this is very similar to what I'm used to in VMware. It's actually, yeah, it's the same kind of panel, and it's all web-based that I'm used to in VMware. All right. I mean, if you just go down the left-hand side here, I've got overview, backup, certificates, devices, files. That's an interesting one. What's files going to be? There's just a ton here. We're going to have to spend some time digging into all these, and this episode's already approaching an hour and a half, so I think I'm going to have to cut this, pull the cord on this pretty quickly here. Oh, I can actually see my C drive. I can actually browse my file system in the web. So that now I have GUI access to the firewall that I disabled. So if I wanted to, I could use the GUI rather than writing a bunch of code. I could use the GUI to create the right rules and then turn these back on. I can see what apps I have. So it's really interesting, right? Microsoft has removed the GUI as far as the console GUI, but they've added it right back with HTML5, I'm guessing, right? A web-based GUI. So really the GUI isn't gone, which is encouraging for those of us that don't have all the PowerShell commands memorized. But we do need some PowerShell to get to this point even. So we're not going to be able to avoid it altogether. And I love PowerShell for scripting. You know, I don't write them from scratch, right? I find a lot of things that useful code that other people have done most often, and customize it for what I need to help run reports about Active Directory users and how often people have changed their passwords and what servers need updates and how long they've been when was the last time they were rebooted and how much disk space they have left. Right, I have scripts that run all that kind of stuff and email them to me on either a daily or weekly basis. Right, that kind of stuff is exactly what PowerShell is great at and meant for. And right, I'll spend time getting those scripts ready and dig into the specific commands I need in the syntax. But I'm not a PowerShell expert by any means. I barely know my way around it, and when I'm not using it, I tend to forget everything about it. So, knowing that I can manage a bunch of core servers with a web-based tool is encouraging to me. And this actually kind of makes me want to start deploying Server 2019 in my environment. But this thing goes back. So I can get this admin tool running right away on my production environment and bring in a bunch of my 2012 servers and start managing them with this and just kind of see like updates. This is kind of cool. I can see what kind of updates are on here. And I had, for a while, been trying to find a way to use PowerShell to automatically, or at least uh, do a batch update of kind of lower priority servers, maybe some utility servers or backup servers that don't really need to be babysat by manual updates. And I just wanted to say, push a command and have those servers update. I spent a little time on it, didn't get it working the way I wanted, and since I haven't had time to spend more time on it. But this may be a quick way to do it if I can get more of a global view of servers and what updates they need. And look, you can restart it right here. This is pretty cool. And you can schedule a restart. That's kind of cool too. So there's a lot to look at here. I think I'm going to stop with that. Success. And hopefully you hung on, right? We're able to hang on for the journey. All right, let me see. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, we were going to take a look. Let's see what size our VM is now. I'm going to browse to my HyperV folder and my hard disk. And now we're at just over 6 gigs of storage for that virtual hard drive. And that's not too bad. So I've got a functional base install of Server 2019 at 6 gigs. That's not too bad. I could get several of those on here on the SSD that I have, even without using a differencing disk. And something that we couldn't do with VM in the VMware lab, but we could do here with HyperV is called a differencing disk, where I create a base install as my master, and then I create disks that are subs or slaves off of that. And basically it's just that any changes off of the master are written to the slave files. Once you do this, you cannot change, right? You do not want to change your master disk file. You leave that alone. But any changes that are made are written to those sub disks. And that saves you 6 gigs for every OS you install, because you don't have to have 6 gigs of storage used for every single server. And I would not use this in production by any means. It has some performance hits, and you're kind of building a tower, a house of cards here, because everything is dependent on that original file being safe and untouched and not corrupted. So if that breaks, then you have all of your servers that are built on it break too. But for a lab, it's fantastic because you can have tens of servers in here and build up a pretty complicated lab environment and not have to use 60 gigs just for the base installs on top of the changes and applications that you make. So maybe we'll get into some of that as we build out this Server 2019 VMware or Server 2019 HyperV lab. All right, some final thoughts here. Server Core is pretty cool, and it's definitely the future of Windows. This is where they're going, and PowerShell skills are going to be required going forward, even though it seems like you can manage a lot of this via an HTML GUI. You still need to get to that point. So you're going to want to have some basic PowerShell skills to get to the point where you can enable and have the networking set up and firewall rules set up, so that then you can manage it however you want, whether with more PowerShell or with the GUI. And I can't imagine, I don't really know, but I have a hard time imagining that there's going to be people who are primarily managing their systems with PowerShell. Maybe if you have thousands of systems, that would make sense, because you just can't there's just you don't have enough. You have to be more efficient than using a GUI on each one. But if you're in a more standard environment where you've got 100 virtual servers or less, and you're managing them, that's doable with a GUI, and it's not quite worth it to build up those PowerShell scripts and to get good at it, to be spending all your time in PowerShell. So that's just my 2 cents. I'd be got coming up the next episode. I believe is going to be on ticketing systems. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about what they are, how they're used, how I've used them in the past, and just a little bit about that. And as always, I want to hear from you. Any questions you guys have about your education, your career, technology, ideas for future episodes, and any feedback on this or previous episodes, send them to me. If you want to hear what you guys thought of Server 2019, you can send me emails, dustin@sysadminshow.com. You can follow me on Twitter @sysadminshow and message me there. And until next time, I want to encourage you to never stop learning.